I was standing in the operating room, gloves on, instruments in hand, another life depending on my focus, when a feeling I had never encountered in 15 years of medicine suddenly stopped me. It was not fear. It was not doubt. It was something I had no scientific name for. My name is Dr. Natasha Volkova, and I am from Russia. I had built my entire life on evidence, on logic, on the belief that every mystery in this universe could eventually be explained by the human mind. I was wrong, and it took one moment, one inexplicable, overwhelming moment, to show me how wrong I truly was. I grew up in Moscow in a family that respected knowledge above all else. My father was an engineer who believed that the universe was a machine and that the purpose of the human mind was to understand its mechanics. My mother was a mathematics teacher who saw beauty not in sunsets or poetry, but in the elegant certainty of an equation solved correctly. God in our household was a concept debated around the dinner table, not worshipped in a prayer room. From a very young age, I understood that if something could not be measured, it could not be trusted. And so I measured everything. I measured my success by my grades, my worth by my degrees, my purpose by the number of lives I saved. I was not a cold person. I loved deeply, but I loved carefully, always within the boundaries of what I could explain. By the age of 34, I had achieved everything that a rational, disciplined woman could hope for. I was a licensed surgeon specializing in cardiovascular procedures. I had published academic papers that my professors praised. I had earned the respect of my colleagues and the gratitude of my patients. My walls were lined with certificates. My shelves carried textbooks in 3 languages. I had devoted myself entirely to the pursuit of knowledge, and knowledge had rewarded me generously. Yet despite being surrounded by all of this achievement, a deep, pervasive sense of emptiness lingered in my heart. I could not explain it. I had no scientific name for it, but it was there, quietly, in every moment between surgeries, in every sleepless night, in every victory that somehow felt hollow the moment it arrived. It was as if I had been filling a vessel with water, only to discover there was a crack at the bottom I had never thought to look for. I told myself it was exhaustion. I told myself it was the pressure of my profession. I told myself that every high-achieving person goes through seasons of emptiness, and that the answer was simply to work harder, rest better, and expect less from life. But deep inside, in that quiet place beneath all the logic and all the discipline, I knew it was something else entirely, something I did not yet have the language to name. The day that changed everything began like any other. A new colleague had joined our department, a woman named Fatima, originally from Egypt. She was brilliant, precise in her diagnoses, unhurried in her manner. There was something in the way she carried herself that I found, at first, difficult to understand. She did not compete. She did not rush. She did not seek validation from the senior physicians the way the rest of us instinctively did. And no matter how intense the pressure around her became, no matter how demanding the shift, how difficult the patient, how heavy the day, she remained, as I can only describe it still, like a lake on a windless morning. I observed her for weeks before I ever spoke to her properly. I noticed small things, the way she would pause before entering a difficult situation and close her eyes for just a moment, the way she never raised her voice, the way she seemed at all times to be drawing from a source of peace that was entirely invisible to me. One afternoon, I found her sitting alone in the break room. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were moving softly. I thought perhaps she was reviewing a medical procedure in her mind. We all had our private rituals for focus, but then I noticed her hands gently folded, palms open, facing upward toward the ceiling. She was praying. I remember walking out of that room quietly, feeling something I could not name, a strange mixture of curiosity and, I am almost embarrassed to admit this, envy. Not the sharp, competitive envy I had known in academic settings, something softer, more honest, a longing. I had never seen a person look so completely at peace. I went back to my office that evening and did something I had never done before. I sat down at my desk, pushed the medical journals aside, and typed 3 words into my search bar. What is Islam? What I found overwhelmed me in a way I was not prepared for. I had expected to find rituals, rules, a list of things permitted and forbidden, a religion built on restriction. Instead, I found a philosophy, a coherent, breathtaking worldview that spoke directly, with startling precision, to every question I had quietly carried inside me for years. Questions I had never dared to speak aloud because I had no one to ask them to. I read about Tawhid, the absolute oneness of God, the idea that the creator of this universe is one, undivided, eternal, in need of nothing and no one, the source of all existence and all meaning. I sat with that concept for a very long time. I turned it over in my mind the way I would turn over a complex diagnosis, and for the first time in my life, something felt completely, undeniably logical about God. How could the Almighty, the supreme creator of the universe, the one who fashioned the endless complexity of the human body I had spent my career studying, be anything other than absolutely one? How could the divine be divided? How could the infinite need anything from the finite? These were not questions of blind faith. They were questions that resonated with the deepest instincts of my scientific mind. I asked Fatima the next morning if I could borrow a translation of the Quran. She looked at me for a moment, not with surprise, not with eagerness, just with that same quiet, unhurried calm. Then she smiled, reached into her bag, and placed a copy in my hands without a single word of pressure, without a single condition, without any expectation at all. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table and opened it. I began with Surah Al-Fatiha, 7 verses. I read them slowly in English, then looked at the Arabic transliteration below. And then something happened that no amount of scientific training had prepared me for. The words entered me, not through my eyes, through something deeper, something beneath language, beneath thought, beneath the carefully constructed architecture of everything I believed I was, something that had no name in any medical textbook I had ever read, and no category in any philosophical framework I had ever studied. I turned to Surah Al-Baqarah and kept reading. An hour passed, then 2. I did not notice. At some point, I realized my face was wet. I was weeping, not from sadness, not from confusion, but from something I can only describe as recognition, as if I were reading words that had been written for me, about me, waiting for me long before I was born. I sat there overwhelmed by a presence I could not see and could not measure, and I thought to myself, I don't know all the words yet, but I feel like I understand everything. The realization that dawned on me next was not gradual. It was not built through weeks of careful, measured reasoning. It was as if a lightning bolt had struck my soul, illuminating every dark corner of doubt I had ever harbored, every hollow victory, every sleepless night, every moment of inexplicable emptiness, all of it suddenly making complete and perfect sense. This was the truth, not a truth. The truth, absolute, eternal, waiting for me all along, patient as only the infinite can be. I must emphasize this. I did not rush. I did not make this decision out of emotion alone. I spent 3 months reading, asking, questioning. I met with a local imam who answered every one of my questions with patience, with scholarship, and with evidence. I brought him my scientific objections. I brought him my philosophical doubts. I brought him years of accumulated skepticism, and he met every single one of them not with dismissal, not with irritation, but with depth and with gentleness. I studied the Arabic alphabet during my lunch breaks so I could feel the Quran closer to its original form. I read about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and found in it a character of such profound mercy and dignity that my heart could not remain unmoved. And on a quiet Thursday morning, in a small mosque not far from where I worked, surrounded by women I had only just met, but who welcomed me as though I had always belonged among them, I pronounced the Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasul. Allah. There are no instruments in medicine that can measure what I felt in that moment. No scale calibrated for that kind of weightlifting from a human chest. No diagnostic category for that particular quality of light entering a room that has been dark for 34 years. The decision to wear the hijab came 3 weeks later. It was not imposed on me. It was not suggested by anyone. It arose from within, slowly, naturally, like a conclusion following inevitably from a proof. I remember the first morning I walked into the hospital wearing it. I braced myself for the stares, for the questions, for the discomfort of being suddenly, visibly different in a place where I had always blended seamlessly into the background. What I did not brace myself for was the profound, radiant certainty that met me in the mirror before I even left my apartment. This was me. Finally, completely, unapologetically, me. Some colleagues were curious. A few were visibly confused. One or two said nothing, but looked at me with an expression I recognized, the same expression I had once worn when watching Fatima pray in the break room. That quiet, searching look of someone encountering a peace they do not yet have words for. But most simply saw what I had always wanted them to see: a doctor, a woman, standing with unshakable dignity. People often ask me, how do you reconcile your faith with your science? How does a surgeon, trained to trust only what can be proven, surrender to something she cannot see? And I tell them the same thing every time. I did not leave science when I found Islam. I finally understood what all that science was pointing to. Every cell I had ever examined under a microscope, every organ I had ever repaired with my hands, every heartbeat I had monitored, every life I had fought to preserve, every impossibly intricate system working in perfect silent coordination inside every human body, all of it, every single detail, was assigned. A sign I had been reading for 15 years without knowing the language it was written in. Islam did not ask me to stop thinking. It invited me to think deeper. It did not ask me to abandon my questions. It gave my questions somewhere to go. Today, I stand before you not only as a doctor, but as a Muslim woman who wears her hijab with unshakable dignity and immense gratitude. My journey was long and sometimes filled with uncertainty, but every moment of doubt was worth it to finally arrive at the truth of Islam. If there is someone watching this today who feels that something is missing, that achievement alone is not enough, that knowledge alone cannot fill what is empty, I invite you, with all the sincerity in my heart, to simply listen. Read one verse of the Quran, just one, and let your heart decide. That is all it took for me.